Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. I hope you're well. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related, wrapped up and hidden away inside your brown grocery shopping bag. Just so when you've finished unpacking it all, you find that little gem to stick inside your lovely MP3 player. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify and YouTube. And if you're listening on YouTube, and I know again there are hundreds of you that do, if you could go to the description, there is a link to iTunes or whatever it's called now. If you could just leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed it, leave a comment. That's how you can really help shape the future of this podcast and how we can start bringing in some really cool things for you guys. So if you're not on Apple Podcasts, just go over there, leave a little review and a 5-star rating. That would be absolutely fantastic. If not, don't worry about it. Now, I told a little porky last weekend. I said that would be the end of season 5 and this would be a new one. I'm extending that deadline to the end of today. Mainly for a couple of reasons. One of them being that I want to make sure we start the new season on the edge of training camp where there's a lot to talk about. And the last 7 days have produced about as much in the way of newsworthy headlines as my love life has in the last 6 months. So I don't want to be boring you here. I don't want to be sitting here giving you the type of analysis that we've said before that is like, ESPN says this player is really good. Like, that's not how we do things here. That's why we have Eagles blockbusters. Talking of which, bit of a minor problem there. I think we finally run out of all the good names. It's a 90-man roster. Yeah, we're going to get there pretty sooner rather than later. So this week will be the last Eagles blockbusters before a reshuffle, hence season 6. Now, we're going to get to last week's answers very soon, where there are 2 winners. I said that, I'm a man of my word. 2 winners. Ooh! Look at that, eh? Big applause. That's good. So 2 winners. We'll have 3 more clues, and from there, we'll start a new sort of tradition. Maybe it's going to be the whole NFL. Maybe it's going to be Eagles players past and present. Maybe not. Who knows? I want to keep it going, but sooner or later, I'm going to have to come up with a cryptic clue for Halapoulivaati Vaitai again, or Carlton Agudosi, or Jeremiah McKinnon. It's a little bit difficult. So I try my best. I really do. I hope you enjoy it. But before we get to the new clues, here are the answers to last week's. Now, I tried to make this as easy as possible. Thank you for all of the entries as well. It was really cool seeing so many new people slide into the DMs and send emails, because that was the aim. I want to get as many of you involved with this show as possible. And knowing you guys enjoy it is fun as well. So here is the first answer. Quick, get your camera. It's English centre-back John Stones. That was Camera John Stone, Cameron Johnston. See? Look, see Cameron Johnston. You can see what I'm trying to get at there. I tried to make it as easy as I could. The next one was, I want to fill up my car with gas, so I need to find a pump that's free. Dunell pump free. Again, it doesn't get much easier, folks. That's as good as it's ever gonna get. It's only downhill from here. The next one was, little hey, little ho, worry high, worry low. Paul Warrilow was the final answer. And I didn't receive, as far as I'm aware, an incorrect set of answers. And the 2 winners were Bracy Lemons and Barry Keefe. There we are. So Bracy Lemons and Barry Keefe have won yourself a fantastic Philly Sports Network t-shirt, handcrafted by me with a sewing. I mean, it's not, but you can order them online if you do want them. There's a link in the description. So if Barry and Bracy, if you guys could reach out to me with an email, I will make sure to get you your new response very soon. So you might want to get yourself a nice logo t-shirt. You might want to get yourself an Outside Insider shirt. Just let me know what you want. Email phillysportsnetwork@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your final 3 clues. Forever, or not forever, but for Eagles blockbusters until the start of season 6 are the following. Clue number 1. I play this electric guitar undercover. I play this electric guitar undercover. Clue number 2. I'm going fishing with Ryan. I hope I don't forget the blank. No, he's not called blank. That's the clue. You fill in the blank. Alright, come on, you got this. I'm going fishing with Ryan. I hope I don't forget the blank. Spoiler, it's not fish. You don't forget the fish. And question 3. Madam, where's Drake's half-brother? Madam, where's Drake's half-brother? And those are your 3 clues. If you think you know the answers for the chance to win 1 Philly Sports Network shirt, make sure you email myself, phillysportsnetwork@gmail.com, or DM me on Twitter, Liam Jenkins PSN. Those are your final clues for Wave 1 of Eagles Blockbusters. I am now in debt. I've had to take out a phenomenal £500,000 loan to cover the cost of these shirts. So bloody enjoy them, alright? That's my clue to you. But honestly, it's been so fun doing this, and I really hope it continues. I just want to take a week away from it, maybe start doing it next week, where we can do a much broader scope, because they're either going to be very easy or very, very difficult. There's no in between. So with that on the back burner, we can now focus on today's podcast, where there hasn't really been any news to talk about over the last 7 days, with players all set for training camp and getting ready for what promises to be another intense schedule once again. I thought it was time to do something a bit different. And we're not going to the depths of saying which Pokemon Eagles running backs would be, because we've been there, we've done that, we don't need a repeat. I was going to say we got the t-shirt, but you guys do, because you're playing Eagles Blockbusters. But what I wanted to do today was talk about Eagles' unpopular opinions. But before we get to that, I did just also really, really quickly want to say that my passport is scheduled to arrive. It should be tomorrow, but it could be a couple of weeks. I've got to go for an interview, which means I will be in Philadelphia in the heart of August. Now, I don't exactly know when yet. I've got to look at travel and when to book and where to stay and that sort of thing. But if you are based in the Philadelphia area, I promise you, we're going to have some fun. Not like that, alright? I just mean we're gonna have some fan meetups, hopefully have like a live podcast. I'd love to rent out a bar for the evening, host a live podcast, give away some more I'll buy a t-shirt cannon. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Just me firing out t-shirts into everyone. That'd be cool. So I'd love to get one of those, but just meet as many of you guys as possible. I'd ideally want to be out there for the whole of Eagles preseason, so I'd be there for around a month or so. There's so much like we've got planned, and it just wouldn't be possible without you guys. So before we get properly into the podcast, just another huge thank you really, because I say this every week, but the podcast has come such a long way in the last 12 months or so. And again, a lot of that is down to you guys and the support you give and allowing me to be myself and be a bit silly. I think honestly over the last year or so, Philly Sports Network as a whole has taken on a new identity. It feels so different. And they say it kind of takes 5 years to have that initial blow up. And if this is it, then great. But just having fun, being me, talking about the Eagles, having an impact on people and brightening their day, or just knowing that you enjoy this podcast, it's the most amazing feeling. So thank you for being a part of this. And I just want to spend as much time with all of you as I can. So there will be times where I want to try maybe rent out a bar or rent out a field or have a tailgate before a game somewhere. And just meet as many of you as I can and really start building this community outwards. So know it's coming. Football's coming home and LJ's coming to Philadelphia, which hopefully could be home one day. You never know. And you've all made that possible. So thank you for sticking with me through the ups and downs and everything in between and making all of this possible. So it's only fair I reward such great loyalty with awful football takes. That is the deal, right? I give you those, you give me support. That's how this back and forth works. And I said earlier on that I was looking at unpopular Eagles opinions, and a lot of people just kind of say them and don't really mean them. And if we look back at my unpopular Eagles opinions from just the last couple of months, we've got some stonkers, alright? We've got the whole Ronald Darby opinion and the fact that I'm nowhere near as high on him on just about anyone else on the planet. In fact, I'm very low in comparison to many of those people. And then we've got other opinions that are stemmed from the off-season regarding the draft and free agency and who should be signed, shouldn't be signed, what they've done well and what they haven't. And this all goes very far back to 2016, where the long-time listeners will know I was sat here punching my desk over and over again until my knuckles bled, trying to pound the table for Sam Bradford. And at that time, when I say 2016, that was the wrong, 2015, that he could be that bridge quarterback for Carson Wentz, that he was one of the more accurate, more reliable QBs in the league when healthy, taking out that second stint of the season where it was incredible. So in terms of hot takes, I've got the cannon ready, I've got it built up, but what I like to do is give them with substance. I don't just like saying something and leaving it out there and watching the replies like some sort of evil mastermind. I like giving them substance to back them up. So I've been looking up and down the Eagles roster, been looking at what I've written and said and recorded over the last few months, and decided to look at some of the takes which I still stand behind today that do hold weight, that could still be an issue moving forward or something that I'm just not seeing when everyone else is. And that's something that Philly Sports Network's always been about. We don't like just sitting there saying everything's green, everything's perfect when it's not. If something's stinking, and we're not just going to spray deodorant over it, we're going to say, that's smelly. Yeah? So, here we are. The first take I want to get to is one that I know is going to cause a little bit of shock, and there's going to be some comments straight away on the YouTube section, but I just ask that before you fire on your keyboards so much that your screen catches fire, if you're on a phone, just hear me out with it, okay? I don't think, after next season, Alshon Jeffery will be an Eagle. I'm going to let that simmer for a bit. I'm going to wait. Someone's woken up on their plane home. Someone has just crashed a car. I hope not. Listening to this out of sheer shock. Someone has just tripped over a drain walking home listening to this podcast. While someone's wife has just been kicked in bed because someone has rolled over out of absolute horror that I've said such an atrocity. Now, Alshon Jeffery is the number one receiver the Eagles have coveted for quite some time. Absolutely so. His impact on this offense has been remarkable since his arrival, and it doesn't have to be statistical. I think the second he arrived, the way it opened up the rest of the field for guys like Zach Ertz, for guys like Trey Burton in 2017, looking at Torrey Smith even in that year, and 2018 especially, when he's fully healthy and without being forced to play on a torn rotator cuff, Alshon Jeffery was on another level. In fact, in 2018, the guy recorded the most catches since 2014 in a year with the Chicago Bears. 64 receptions he had last year for 843 yards and 6 touchdowns, 13 yards per catch. A true number one receiver. The problem is, and it's no, I guess, like, defamation of Jeffery, it's nothing negative about him whatsoever, is that the Eagles are now paying Carson Wentz a lot of money. It's their salary cap through all these backloaded deals, Jeffery included, is not looking exactly beautiful anymore. It's looking a little bit daunting now because sooner or later, these players are going to have to be paid what they're worth. Although you can't just keep taking out more credit card deals. Eventually, they're going to sniff it out and go, look, I want more guaranteed money, a la Malcolm Jenkins, and that's going to lead to a little bit of friction. Look, I mean, there were rumours, I can't remember who put it out, but earlier in the offseason, that two names who wanted that bigger payday were Zach Ertz and Lane Johnson. Now, both of those guys are contracted for at least 3 more years, so I don't see why they're kicking off now. But you can make the case, give it 1 more year, 2 more years of solid production from both of those guys. They're going to want more guaranteed money and less restructures and less dummy years. That's the nature of it. So Jeffery next year is due to make $15.9 million. The Eagles are paying Nelson Agholor $9 million this year. The Eagles also just drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who is almost a direct clone of Alshon Jeffery. Not just in his skill set, not just in what he can do, or his 40 time, or any of the athletic traits, but inch for inch, pound for pound, a direct Alshon Jeffery clone. A baby Alshon, if you will. Now, if the only way this doesn't backfire is by putting Arcega-Whiteside in the slot, which makes sense, because the Eagles wanted big body slot receivers. They worked plenty out during the pre-draft process. Many assumed that they were going to go with exactly that. They were going to pick out a guy like one of those mid-round steals, a big body receiver who can line up in the slot, maybe trade Nelson Agholor. That didn't happen. So now the Eagles are going to have to decide, like, where is Arcega-Whiteside lining up in all of this? Does he become the eventual heir to Alshon Jeffery's throne, a future number one receiver, which is something he was touted as coming out of college after all, right? He was going to be that guy, the future number one wideout. Or do you put him in the slot? Either way, next year, there's going to be a split roads, or crossroads. I don't know what a split roads is, but that's there. If the Eagles walk away from Nelson Agholor, they need a slot guy. If they keep Alshon Jeffery, bearing in mind Deshaun Jackson's going to earn more money as well, they can put Arcega-Whiteside in the slot, keep Zach Ertz, and suddenly you have got a very lethal receiving core. The other way to look at this is you trade Alshon Jeffery, or do whatever you have to do. There's a $15.9 million cap hit. You give that money on a new 3 to 4 year deal to Nelson Agholor, shoring up the slot. It's clear they want him around because obviously they brought him back on a very substantial amount of money, and he's not going to take anything less now, unless it is a future deal where in 2 to 3 years he's earning double that, let's say. And if you keep Nelson Aguilar around and move Arcega-Whiteside to that number one receiver, your offense looks exactly the same. It's going to function exactly the same, but you're not paying Alshon Jeffery $16 million. You're instead paying Arcega-Whiteside the second year of his rookie deal. And I could see the Eagles easily trading that, maybe bringing back a fourth round comp pick, something, a pick, maybe like a third, fourth rounder and a player, something to sweeten the deal that then gives them Jackson, Arcega-Whiteside and Nelson Aguilar on a rework or a new deal. If not, the idea of having Jeffery, Arcega-Whiteside and Jackson as your three wide receivers is fantastic, but I don't think it's viable. I think the team have really bought into Nelson Aguilar. They've had him since he was a rookie. They've seen his progress. And I'm not, again, going to bring up those accusations or the anonymous sources or anything like that, but I think you can easily look at the frustrations coming out of the locker room with regards to Carson Wentz and the target share and why Zach Ertz was getting so much of the ball. And if you're Alshon Jeffery, you're frustrated. You're used to being the number one guy and suddenly you're not. Even if it wasn't him, even if he did nothing and he didn't say a single word and he has been lovely and spoke nothing but glowingly of Carson Wentz to everyone he has ever interacted with, you would still understand frustration. I would be. If you're signed to be the guy and suddenly you're not getting that attention and all the attention is going elsewhere, you're going to be annoyed. And the spike in production when Nick Foles was at the helm was no joke. So if Alshon is anything less than 100% happy, if he balls out as this security blanket, as someone that set a new career high, or the most catches since 2014, that was looking like a great wide receiver. Alshon Jeffery was a steady, reliable, consistent wide receiver, putting up great numbers in that offense that is designed to be very Golden State-esque. And that is something that Jordan Matthews told me a couple of years ago when he was on the team. We had an interview. They see it as a Golden State type offense. And if Steph can't go, they had KD. If KD couldn't go, they had Clay. If Clay's not producing, they've got Draymond. It's that kind of scheme. It depends on the team you're facing and their vulnerabilities. It's game to game. It's selfless for the betterment of the team. If Alshon Jeffery is any less than 100% and wanting to be the guy somewhere, the Eagles have his replacement for, 4 more years after this year. They've got Nelson Aguilar, who's currently making $9 million. If you can shed $15.9 million and pay Nelson Aguilar $11 million and net an actual profit of $4.9 million, I don't think it's suddenly that stupid. If especially Jeffery balls out next year, maybe he does blow up for a 1,000 yard season. If he does, he's going to want a new contract anyway, and it's one the Eagles might not even be able to afford. So whatever way you look at it, Jeffrey's in catch-22. If he has a great year, he's going to want more money. The Eagles can't give it to him. If he has a bad year, the Eagles are going to be paying him $15.9 million while having a potential replacement and having to maybe look at a potential slot replacement for Nelson Aguilar. Unless Alshon Jeffery is willing to take yet another contract rework or something else, I just can't see him making this team in 2020. There is going to be a roadblock in the way. That one of 4 different crossroads, whether it comes from Aguilar, the other likely scenario here, if Alshon Jeffery has already been frustrated, if he's already been a bit wound up, it's hard to say yes he definitely has, but if we're looking at anonymous sources, if we're looking at the way they've come out and what's been said, it's clearly from a wide receiver, and it's not Matt Collins who sat there with a phantom injury. It's very difficult to assume some of those comments are not from Alshon Jeffery. So if that is the case, and Carson Wentz and Deshaun Jackson build a rapport, and Deshaun Jackson posts 850 yards, and Zach Ertz posts 150 yards, is there enough to go round for a $15.9 million wide receiver as well as Nelson Aguilar, as well? No, the answer is no. So there's just no way that after this season, Jeffery is satisfied with his role as current. Because he's either done exceptionally well and earned more money and will want a new deal, which the Eagles can't give. He may have underperformed, which would lead the Eagles to go, right, Arcega-Whiteside comes in. Or they lose Nelson. There could be a whole butterfly effect of different events that happen. I can't see it. I honestly can't. I think this is going to be his last season. And again, it's not for a bad reason. It's not that, oh, he's bad for the locker room. Oh, he's a bad guy. Oh, he stinks. He stinks at football. No, Jeffery's a fantastic receiver. Jeffery's dominant. He's brilliant to watch. He opens up the offense. He's a big leader. Helps the younger guys. The issue is that the Eagles have invested such a substantial amount of money that they're now going to head to a crossroads. And they're going to have to decide, right, we've got your backup coming in. We've got a guy that's younger, that's built the same way, that is almost, a tenth of the price. And if he shows he can produce a tenth of the production, I mean, it is just difficult. But I want to know what you guys think on that, because it is a bit of a hot take. It is a bit different. And it's just a different way of thinking. Now, I'm not advocating it. I want Jeffery to stay in Philadelphia from a neutral standpoint and someone that covers the team. I think he has done great things for that franchise, great things for the locker room, and for the confidence of a young quarterback who in 2016, his number one option was a slot receiver, his number two option was a struggling Nelson Aguilar, and his number three option was Dorial Green-Beckham. They've come a long way since then. Alshon Jeffery is a massive part of that. He was a huge cog in the Super Bowl run, a huge cog in the actual Super Bowl, and was one of the main keys keeping the offense locked in at wide receiver in 2018 throughout all the quarterback changes between week 1 and 3, then week 3 and 40, and then back again. So it is catch-22. But I can't see Jeffery coming back. Again, if you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments, or tweet me, email me, whatever you want to do. Before we get to the remaining points, we do have to go to our favourite part of the show, which is Thank You Next. It is the best part because it's your questions, my Twitter, over a microphone, aka Thank You Next. And we've only got a couple of questions this week, but again, it's July, I can't blame you. But I was impressed with the image we put out, which was Chip Kelly riding a bike on the way to training camp, and for some reason, it's my spirit animal. He looks so confused and out of breath, and he's got a nice tight-fitting, Nike thermal shirt on. And the headline on Breakfast on Broad was Chip Kelly rides bike, and it was iconic. It was absolutely iconic. Why that needed a caption? Say what you see? I don't know. But Chip Kelly riding a bike is my eternal spirit animal. And these two questions, are the ones we're going to ask. So thank you. Next, we're going to start off with Brian Cameron, one of our writers from Philly Sports Network. If you're not following him already, make sure you do, at B Cameron PSN. See, we all have PSN in our name now, not PlayStation Network. That's the lame network. We want the big super PSN. And B Cam says, should the Eagles look to add more veteran safety depth? Still some good options left at the position. I mean, it's a good point. You're very right. And it's weird because I was actually doing a little bit of work recently for, again, as some of you guys know that I work for an agency on the side. So I was doing some work looking at the veteran safeties, or veterans overall, over 30, currently at every position, and looking at why they're still on the market, why they're still available. And there are still guys that I would take. As someone like Mike Adams, who's had a 14-year career, played well in 2018, started all 16 games. He's 38 years old. He's the oldest free safety available, but he's shown no real signs of slowing down. He's not exactly done a Corey Graham here. Glover Quinn retired, so that put a spanner in the works. But Kendrick Lewis, for instance, had an 8-year career, was an emergency depth guy last year for Tennessee, had an amazing 9-tackle game, probably a depth option, could be a third, fourth safety anyway. I mean, Mike Mitchell spent last year on IR, could be a name. Darian Stewart, a former Pro Bowler, was cut to save cap space, had a visit with the Colts, there was still interest there. Or do you bring back someone like Kirk? I don't know. I think the Eagles, as of right now, you've got Jenkins, McLeod's coming back off injury, Blake Countess is an intriguing option. It all depends what happens with Sendejo. If they intend on keeping him around, I don't think there's a real need, because they're ideally going to be your first three safeties anyway, with Countess being that fourth, that Jalen Watkins sort of role who plays on special teams. If for any reason that's not the case, and they try and get that 4th round pick for Sendejo, it's been a while since we've done that. Let's just do one more for the brand, with his full name. Andrew Sendejo. There you go, you're welcome. If they do cut him, I think there's a need. If not, I mean, put it this way, I'm not going to go into a season with McLeod, Jenkins, Countess, Trey Sullivan, and DeAndre. It's just not, no, we're not doing that. Unless you move Maddox to safety, which will lead very nicely onto my second unpopular opinion in just a little while. But thank you. Next, Geordie Fighter 14, Reliable, says, who are your top 3 favourite players and the top 3 best players on the roster? It's weird because I can't really have favourites as a journalist. I can't sit there saying, oh, he's my favourite guy, in the way that I would look at Charlton and say Lyle Taylor is my favourite player. Like, I wouldn't marry Lyle Taylor. I mean, the guy is a god. But for the Eagles, because I'm covering them and I've got to remain neutral, it's always a little bit odd. But in terms of my favourite players from, I guess, a neutral point of watching or breaking down, I love Crayvon LeBlanc. We have to. I love Rasul Douglas. I have to for the brand. You know, that's just the way the cookies crumbled, and I've got an affiliation for those guys and want them to succeed. Outside of that, I think Fletcher Cox just doesn't get the notoriety that he should. He doesn't get the respect he deserves, purely because Aaron Donald exists. If Aaron Donald wasn't such a generational talent, Fletcher Cox is head and shoulders above the rest of the league at his position. And because that's not the case, he's just put in that best of the rest category, and that's never one you want to be in. I mean, that sums up my entire love life, really, being best of the rest, and it's not a nice category, you know? So, there's that. In terms of the best 3 players on the roster, again, that's hard to quantify, but Cox is certainly up there. You can make an argument, certainly, for Carson Wentz. Outside of that, that's when it gets a little bit murky, because do you go for someone like Zach Ertz? More than likely, unless you're going to go Alshon Jeffery. But if you're looking at guys to build around with a roster, maybe even Lane Johnson, I would say, is a great option. Yeah, let's do that. Let's say, I think Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox and Carson Wentz. Those would be the players I'd say are the best at the position. Now, that is it for Thank You Next. If you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed that brief 2-minute sprint, which normally is a marathon, make sure to tweet me. Let me know next week's questions at Liam Jenkins PSN. I always put out a sassy image, again, of Chip Kelly on a bike every single week, where you can reply with your questions about anything and everything and some of the things, all in my mentions. That would be great. So we're going to move on to my second unpopular opinion. There are 3 that we're going to go through. The second one is, I think the Eagles are destined for some secondary setbacks. And I know this is a bizarre one, because on the surface, they've got the best problem possible, right? You've got too much talent. You've got so much going on. You've got too much talent in this locker room. You've got Mills. Well, why did I start with Jalen Mills? You've got, I went to get starters down. You've got Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills, Sidney Jones, Crayvon LeBlanc, Rasul Douglas, Avonte Maddox. Then you go to the save. Like, there's a lot of talent there. The problem is, how do you get the best talent on the field? Now, I would liken this to being that cocky, arrogant guy, which of course I am. I know all about that life. That kind of guy that struts around and he's like got a bit of a spring in his step. Sort of a Conor McGregor type guy. Bit ripped, goes to a club and just acts like an arsehole to everyone. That kind of guy. They always brag about their love life and how amazing, how many girls they've slept with and all their records and all the drugs they do. But at home, there's very little substance and all the girls actually hate them. I'm kind of worried that's what's going to happen with this. Because it's very difficult to facilitate getting all that talent on the field without there being a significant setback. If we go into the season with what's likely Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills and Sidney Jones, I think Jones deserves to be at least given a shot outside. I think you hurt Avonte Maddox and you hurt Rasul Douglas unless one of them moves to safety. The most likely candidate there, of course, is Avonte Maddox, given that he had great success there in his rookie year. But you're hurting growth of guys who are contracted longer, have higher upsides, and you know are going to be around. Ronald Darby likely isn't an Eagle in 2020. We know that. He signed a 1-year deal. Great. Jalen Mills probably isn't an Eagle. Or if he is, he's a depth guy. The thing with Jalen Mills now is that he missed all of OTAs with an injury, and in that time, both Maddox and Douglas looked good. The knock on Douglas before was his inconsistency. In 2018, I don't know what he was eating. It was like the guy just consumed protein shake after protein shake, came out looking like a transformer, and blew up everyone in his path. Was a tackling machine. He was the Motor Trend 2019 Truck of the Year. Ford, Chevy, Colorado, Silverado, X900. Monster. So now, if your main reason for keeping Jalen Mills on the roster was he can tackle, you've got a guy that can do that also led the team in interceptions, despite playing less snaps, despite playing less games, despite the team literally signing a guy off the street, Dexter McDougal, before giving Rasul Douglas a chance. At this point, I don't think you can go back. That, and bizarrely, I mentioned this before, Rasul Douglas put on Twitter about a month or two ago about him wanting to be a Pro Bowler in 2019. That's not going to happen if you're on the bench. Unless you wouldn't say that if you knew you were going to be on the bench, and he knows his role better than anyone because he is in the role. He's not going to make a Pro Bowl as a reserve, as a special teamer. So if he wants to be a Pro Bowl candidate, he's going to be starting. And he's not going to replace Ronald Darby because the Eagles have cap ties to him. So it's going to be over Jalen Mills. I do think, though, there would be some blowback. If Rasul Douglas starts over Jalen Mills, where does Avonte Maddox go? Do you put him at safety? Do you put him at corner? No matter, it really is, like, if you pursue one, if you're on a seesaw, I don't know what you guys call them in America, but the big, like, bars, they go up and down. I think you probably do call them seesaws. I'm going to just say seesaw. It's a kid's thing at a park. You sit on it and the chair moves up. But if you go to one end of it, the other end lifts up. Alright? A scale. If you go to the other end lifts up. If you go all in on Maddox, Rasul Douglas is left in the cold. If you go all in on Douglas, Maddox is left in the cold. All the while, Jalen Mills is sat there with green hair, being a fan favourite, wondering why he can't get on the field. There is going to be some blowback. Now, someone suggested recently, forgive me because I can't remember who it was, in one of the comments, I think it was the Jalen Mills film room, saying why not have him as a red zone specialist? And I get that. I think that's a great idea. But I think, again, there'd be blowback. Because if you're Rasul Douglas and you're perfect all drive and you're batting away passes, and then on a third down on, that same drive on 2 occasions, a pass goes over the middle to a tight end who takes him 30 yards down the field, Douglas is still red hot. He's doing everything. He's executing well. There's no need to take him out. Then you rip him out to put Mills in, who could still be a mess anyway. And now there was that initial thing with Douglas. Again, I've said this several times on the podcast, where in 2017, when he was pulled after the return of Ronald Darby, he was annoyed. He was upset. Because he was playing well. There was no reason to pull him. But the Eagles were obliged to Ronald Darby for contract reasons. He was the natural CB1. Darby was upset. Maybe this was vocalised to Schwartz. And maybe that's why down the line, Schwartz was more than happy to allow Dexter McDougal to run into Jordan Hicks before giving him a shot. You would get annoyed. There's no two ways about it. Same with Avonte Maddox. It doesn't matter what you do at this cornerback position. Someone's growth is stagnating. Someone else is losing out. There are at least 2 to 3 guys who aren't going to get the field time they deserve because of this. So unless Jalen Mills does not start, unless somehow Ronald Darby is traded, let's not forget how he was acquired after all, I will be worried. I'm a bit concerned that the battle of ego is going to take over there. The man we haven't even mentioned yet is Crayvon LeBlanc, who, given that Sidney Jones can't stay healthy, I think has earned a right to start nickel, or at least be given a shot to in pre-season and prove his worth. First play of the game, intercepts it, Captain Crayvon against the Saints. Are we going to ignore that now? And that's my point. I think that harmony is going to start boiling over a little bit. Someone's left the oven on. That wasn't an observation in my house, by the way. That was part of the take. So I don't know. But that is what I think. There will be some secondary blowback. Expect more anonymous sources. Expect some friction. Expect maybe guys squaring up to... I don't know. But training camp especially is going to be very intense. Especially if Mills isn't active for portions of it. And finally, my last unpopular opinion... And I was torn between 2 here, but it's kind of just become the norm for me, and it's not that hot takey. And we've got to get the takes in for the brand here. I don't think the Eagles did enough on the defensive line this offseason. I don't think they've done enough. Not to get significantly better. Or at least stay the same. If anything, I don't want to go that far into hot takery, but you can certainly make the argument it's a bit of a downgrade. Let me tell you why. Let's start with defensive tackle. Last year, it was meant to be Fletcher Cox, Timmy Jernigan. Jernigan goes down and suddenly the need for depth heightens. So the Eagles go out, they sign Malik Jackson. Brilliant. That brings you exactly the type of player you need. But the issue now is DT3. So you bring back Timmy Jernigan, who, I still don't understand this, is annoyed. Timmy Jernigan was genuinely fuming that he had less money, that he took a fraction. Yeah, if you didn't miss the whole season with injury, you wouldn't be... Don't complain about the situation if you're going to sign a contract. Like, imagine applying for a job, getting the job, and being... Didn't even want this job. Didn't even like the job. Bloody job. Like, that aggravates me. And then he goes out and makes rap music now. That's a thing. Timmy Jernigan spits bars. So, whether the team have a saying on that, or they've found out about it because he goes off some like weird name, like 2 Chainz Jones or whatever it is. So, it's cool. It's not a bad song. I'm a fan. But his mind seems to just be a little bit, not distorted, but, I think there might be some blowback there. It's more DT4. So defensive tackle itself isn't that much of a problem because the Eagles neutralised the loss of Jernigan last year through Michael Bennett and guys like Trayvon Hester who kind of stepped up to the plate. I do think, though, if Jernigan is reduced, if he struggles with injury again, you're still back to square one, only you've now got another running mate for Cox. It's an upgrade. That goes up. Where it goes down, despite question marks, is defensive end. And I still stand by this today. Chris Long, for instance, I've said this before, played in 58% of snaps last year, 48% in 2017. He ranked 27th among all defensive players in the NFL in quarterback pressures. He hit quarterbacks on 3.3% of snaps. That may not sound like a lot. For context, Randy Gregory was 3.3, DeMarcus Lawrence 3.1, Myles Garrett, bless him, I'm not in it, Myles Garrett 2.9%, Trey Flowers 2.7, Cam Jordan 2.4, Robert Quinn 2.4. Solid numbers. So to try and negate that loss, they brought back Vinny Curry, who played 55% of snaps with the Eagles in 2017, 42 tackles and 3 sacks. That's all well and good. That's a like for like, almost. But it's not just Long that they're losing. If you compare the 29 depth chart to the start of this year compared to last year, tell me which one sounds better. On the left, Brandon Graham, Sharif Miller, Deshaun Hall. On the right, Barnett, Curry, Sweat, Ostman. 2018 was Graham, Long and Sweat. On the right, Burnett, Means and Ostman. It's tricky. Michael Bennett posted 9 sacks last year. He often shifted inside, he lined up in the forward technique, hovered over the inside shoulder and just gave some relief for Fletcher Cox. He had the 3rd most quarterback pressures of any edge rusher since 2014, 37 last season, and 20 hits according to Pro Football Focus. There's a gaping hole for Bennett's production and snap count, which was 68%. Fine. You've now got 68% to fill. Who's going to step up? Well, you've got Josh Sweat, who is still an unproven commodity. The coaching staff are high on him, but he was just kind of brought in garbage time downs last year. You've then got Sharif Miller, the rookie who was drafted in the 4th round out of Penn State. Again, fine, but he's very one-dimensional at the moment. He doesn't have pass rushing moves. He's got a bull rush, and that's it. And he's light. He's about 255 pounds. He's gonna get worked against some of those more interior work, those more powerful tackles, those more dominant tackles. Then you've got Joe Ostman, who is a practice squad guy who the team are high on. Now, somewhere along the line, Barnett and Graham are going to rotate out. You're going to have either Curry and Miller, Curry and Hall, Curry and Sweat, Curry and Ostman. It's tricky. I don't think they've done enough to replace Bennett and Long. Maybe negated Chris Long. Vinny Curry's going to be a nice absence. Oh, a nice improvement, I should say. But replacing Michael Bennett, that's on Malik Jackson. That same versatility is in Malik Jackson. The problem is, if you move Malik Jackson out a little bit, you're going to have double teams on Cox. It depends on the formation. I get the versatility of Malik Jackson. I think that's going to be an underrated asset. But you can't lean on that in the same way you couldn't lean on fully Bennett playing just inside. Most of his damage was outside, the same way most of Jackson's will be inside. Sure, Jackson can play at defensive end, he can play at a 5-tech or a 4-tech, but I'm not sure if it's going to be his permanent home. Don't get me wrong, I mean, the idea of having... Oh, wow, an email just blown up, that was fun. Don't get me wrong, the idea of having Jackson, Cox, Jernigan in a 3-down alignment with maybe one edge rusher, one of the more powerful guys, that's great. But your NASCAR package, let's say the lightest guys, is Graham, Barnett, Curry, and Sweat or Miller? Really? It's not quite the same as Graham, Barnett, Bennett, and Long. Nowhere near. So I think that somewhere down the line, all it takes is one injury. All it takes is one. To Bennett, to Barnett, or to Curry, even for a few games, and that depth will be sorely tested. And you can shake your head at the idea of Connor Barwin signing all you want. But I think that will be sorely tested. And they need to have someone else coming. But if they can get one more vet in, one more name, and again, looking at that, the work I did for the agent, I said earlier on, where I work for the agency, you look at kind of veterans and why they're still available. There are no real... Outside of Andre Branch, I can't think of another name that is a sustainable defensive end over 30 who can come in. Andre Branch was a backup last year, had a start and like 1.5 sacks. He worked out with the Cardinals this offseason. Teams are still looking at him. Derek Shelby's had injuries. Michael Johnson's in a decline. William Hayes was just awful. Frosty Rucker is just getting older. I don't know where you turn, but I don't think the Eagles have done enough, because all it takes is one guy to go down. And if that happens, it's a very different discussion. But I want you guys to let me know what you think. These are all unpopular opinions. They're designed to generate discussion. So I want you to discuss, am I right? Am I wrong? Have I been drinking the silly juice? Or have I had too much Red Bull? Let me know down in the comments. Guys, you have been incredible. Unless you've not been, in which case, behave, alright? Be incredible. But just thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It means the absolute world to me. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you next time on an episode of The Outside Insider. You can follow me at Liam Jenkins PSN, at Philadelphia SN. I'll talk to you soon.